I also, I'm not really going to be doing a blog with this particular video or vlog, but I am going to be doing something slightly different. Um, Knowing how best I learn myself to do stuff is with someone on a video and I watch and stuff like that. Um, I find me taking the information a lot better that way as in a teacher in a classroom. So that's what I was going to do. I was going to start just reading a few of these and letting other people. So I figured if I read this out, it would help other people, and I could watch the video back again, and it would help me to remember the information because I'm going to be reading and telling it myself. So, first things first, though, um, AOPA is some sort of magical organization for flyers. Because anytime I started emailing or talking to the school, I instantly have an email in my inbox saying, "Hey, would you like to join now?" And I got my membership card. There is some benefits to having um, AOPA. I mean, they have uh, e-magazines, surveys, quizzes, and they help you take. They also have insurance and stuff like that. They help you buy, sell planes and stuff like that. But I just found it interesting how they must have some interesting adware bots or Google bots watching. Because as soon as you type anything about planes, or as soon as you say you're going to college or flight training, there's always been an email. One time I complained to them because I was getting like 6 emails an hour from them. And then they said so they won't send anymore, and that stopped. And then soon as I went to that information session, as soon as I came home, there it was. The email was waiting for me, right there. And I hadn't typed anything on the internet. I typed it in the calendar on my college things and say, "Hey, I got that as a reminder." But it was weird that they came up. Um, so they do have um, they do have an app. So this is what I would call an Android tablet, even though it's a Fire HD. But I've put the Google Play Store onto this. So basically, I've stripped it of Amazon stuff and turned it into a Google Android app. Um, AOAP has its own little app. You can do download the latest information. You can get the weather. You can, if you're gonna do a flight plan, you can submit flight plans through them. Um, the information at the top right is airports. So let me get there, and it has my. I had I had a brief look at this, and it has the airports that are nearest to me, but these are my favorite ones. 69N is Slayton. Um, Jake Anna Lehighton is the airport that you see me sometimes landing in X-Plane 11. I do my touch and goes there. I take off from Allentown, which is Gabe at the bottom, and then you can. Then I fly over to Jake Anna on the game. So currently it tells me it's not VFR conditions, it's moderate VFR, like slightly IFR. And it has all the information for the airports, it has the frequencies, uh, there's nothing on lightning schedules and stuff like that. Um, they have the ETIS information, so you can have the frequency. And I did it before, but I'll call the automatic number so you can hear on the phone what the ATIS information is like. Um, I remember how to decode the meta information so we can understand it. Um, but I can do that again since I'm starting this from scratch. Um, but yeah, it tells you the conditions of the runways and stuff like that. There is supposed to be diagrams, but I haven't seen them yet. And these are all the nav A's, VORs, and stuff like that that are around. So, depending from what direction that you're flying to or flying from, you can tune into those frequencies, and the VOR in the middle of the plane will direct you to that. Basically, radio direction finder, fictional radar, or radio, because there's if you have put point A in the middle and you have a circus wheel or circumference wheel, you know what I mean. You start out with 0 and then to 180. So if you say you're going on the 19th radio from me, that means you're going from the 19th aerial going out. So that means you'd be going top right. So we're going over that too. So yeah, I'm going to start doing a couple of these. I'll probably do a section per video, and then just upload it. I don't know if it's going to help anyone else, but I know this is going to help me, so that's why I'm doing this. I hope it's going to be helpful to other people, but it's... And that's the whole point of me doing the video and stuff like that, just... So, let me read it. So this is the 11th edition ASA Private Pilot Oral Exam Guide by Michael D. Hayes, the comprehensive guide to prepare you for the FAA check ride. I mean, I have a long ready go. I haven't even started flying yet, but I wanted to start reviewing the questions. And I mean, it's more time now for me to review and practice, because I know it can be a while to sink in. So, it says introduction. The Private Pilot Oral Exam Guide is a comprehensive guide designed for the student pilots who are involved in training for the private pilot certificate. Well, that's Captain Obvious. This guide was originally designed for use in a 14 CFR Part 141 flight school, but has quickly become popular with those training under Part 61 and are not affiliated with an FAA-approved school. The guide will also prove beneficial to private pilots who wish to refresh their knowledge or who are preparing for a flight review. The Private Pilot Airplane Airman Certification Standards, I'm not going to read those numbers, specifies the areas in which knowledge must be demonstrated by the applicant before a pilot certificate or rating can be issued. The Private Pilot Oral Exam Guide has been designed to evaluate a pilot's knowledge of those areas. This guide contains questions and answers organized into 8 main divisions which represent those areas of knowledge required for the practical test. Check the ASA website. I'll put the links in the description if need be. Periodically for downloadable updates, which are created whenever changes occur in the FAA regulations and procedures affecting this book. Future updates may also contain additional study material and new FAA information regarding the private pilot check ride. At any time during the practical test, an FAA examiner may ask in addition. Chapter 9 provides scenario-based questions which often test multiple subjects or areas. Through very intensive post-private pilot check ride debriefings, we have provided you with the most consistent questions asked along with the information necessary for a knowledgeable response. The guide may be supplemented with other comprehensive study materials as noted in the parentheses after each question, for example, etc., etc. The abbreviations for these materials and their titles are listed below. Be sure to use the latest revision of these references when reviewing for the test. Okay. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can... all these different parts and reference materials. Okay, so part 1, qualifications. A. Privileges and limitations. What are the eligibility requirements for a private pilot airplane certificate? A. Be at least 17 years of age. That's right, 17-year-olds. B. be able to read, speak, write, and understand the English language. Yeah, you have to speak English because that's all they speak in on the ATC. Hold at least a third-class medical certificate, which I do. Received the required ground and flight training endorsements. Meet the applicable aeronautical experience requirements. Pass the required knowledge and practical tests. Exam tip. The evaluator may ask you to demonstrate that you are current and eligible to take the practical test. When preparing for your practical test, verify that you have the required hours, that you're current, and don't fail to double check all your endorsements, especially the 90-day solo flight endorsement. Make sure you have totaled all of the logbook columns and the entries make sense. Number 2. What privileges and limitations apply to a private pilot? No person who holds a private pilot certificate may act as pilot in command or an aircraft that is carrying passengers or property for compensation or hire, nor may that person for compensation or hire act as pilot in command of an aircraft, a private pilot. A may act as PIC of an aircraft in connection with any business or employment if it is only incidental to that business or employment and does not carry passengers or property or for compensation or hire. May not pay less than pro rata share of operating the expenses of a flight with passengers provided the expenses involved only fuel, oil, airport expenditures, and rental fuels. Basically, if you go out with a group of friends, you all have to pay equal amounts to cover the costs. So if I go out with 4 friends, I can say, they can't turn around and say, hey, we'll pay for you since you're flying. That's not allowed. I have to fork it out. And although how they would know and how they would enforce that, I don't know. But C may act as PIC of a charitable, non-profit, or community event flight described in one of those sections. If the sponsor and pilot comply with the requirements of that regulation. Also, may be reimbursed for aircraft operating expenses that are directly related to search and location operations, search and rescue stuff, basically. Provided the expenses involve only fuel, oil, airport expenditures, or rental fees, and the operation is sanctioned under the direction and control of local, state, and federal agencies or organizations that conduct search and location operations. A may demonstrate an aircraft in flight to a prospective buyer if the private pilot is an aircraft salesman and has at least 200 hours of logged flight time. F may act as PIC of an aircraft towing a glider or unpowered ultralight vehicle provided they meet the requirements. G may act as PIC for the purpose of conducting a production flight test in a light sport aircraft intended for certification in the light sport category, provided they meet the requirements of such and such. Number 3. Explain the statement may not pay less than pro rata share of the operating expenses of a flight, which means what we just read. You have to pay your share. If there's 3 people going in the plane with me, I have to pay 1/3. Pro rata means proportional. The pilot may not pay less than his or her proportional share of the flight operating expenses with the passengers, provided the expenses involve only fuel, oil, airport expenditures, or rental fees. So, if you're paying for gas, I have to pay my share. Number 4. The annual inspection of your aircraft is now due, and you ask several friends that fly with you regularly to contribute money to help pay for the inspection. Do the regulations allow for these contributions? No, they do not. We just read that they don't. Answer: no. A private pilot may not pay less than his pro rata. That's all I'm going to say. I don't need to repeat it a 3rd time. Number 5. To act as a required pilot, flight crew member or of a civil aircraft, what must a pilot in his or her physical possession or readily accessible in the aircraft? A pilot certificate or special purpose pilot authorization. B, a photo identification, so you need your DL. And C, medical certificate, which I have in my wallet, and I also have it in my medical logbook. While you're performing a pre-flight inspection on your aircraft, an inspector from the FAA introduces herself and says she wants to conduct a ramp inspection. What documents are you required to show the inspector? Each person who holds an airman certificate, medical certificate, authorization, or license required by 14 CFR Part 61 must present it, and their photo identification for inspection upon request from the administrator. An authorized NTSB representative, any federal, state, or local law enforcement officer, or an authorized representative of the TSA. I wonder if there was an option, like if someone comes up and you think they're fake, if you can say, can you wait a minute while I call up to make sure that they're legit? Like if they present their ID and badge and say, do you mind if I call TSA and make sure you're legitimate? Because I'm sure there has to be fraudulent ones. I mean, I don't know, maybe. Number 7. What is the definition of a high-performance airplane, and what must you do to act as pilot in command of such an airplane? A high performance is an airplane with an engine of more than 200 horsepower. To act as PIC of a high performance, you must have A. Received and logged ground and flight training from an authorized instructor in a high performance plane, or in a flight simulator or flight training device that is representative of a high performance airplane, and have been found proficient in the operation and systems of that airplane. Received and logged a one-time endorsement in your logbook from an authorized instructor who certifies that you are proficient to operate a high-performance airplane. Note, it says, the training and endorsement required by this regulation is not required if the person has logged flight time as PIC of a high-performance airplane, or in a flight simulator or flight training device that representative of a high-performance player prior to August 4th, 1997. So this rule doesn't apply if you're before 97. Number 8. Other than high-performance and complex aircraft, what other types of aircraft require specific training and logbook endorsements from an appropriately rated flight instructor? High-altitude airplane, we just read. Tailwheel airplane. No person may act as pilot in command of a tailwheel airplane unless that person has received and logged flight training. That's basically everything we said before. Number 9. What is the definition of a complex airplane, and what must you do to act as pilot of command of such an airplane? A. Complex airplane is defined as an airplane that has retractable landing gear, flaps, and a controllable pitch propeller, including airplanes equipped with a full authority digital engine control, also known as FADEC. To act as pilot in command of such an airplane, you must have A. Received logged ground and flight training from an authorized instructor in a complex airplane, or in a flight simulator or flight training device that is representative of complex airplanes. So the Beechbound is a complex aircraft because it has retractable landing gear. Interesting. B. Received one-time endorsement in your logbook from an authorized instructor. Yeah, exactly the same before. And you don't need that if you have it before 1977. Number 10. With respect to certification, privileges, and limitations of airmen, define the terms category, class, and type. Category, a broad classification of aircraft, i.e. aeroplane, rotorcraft, glider, etc. Class, a classification of aircraft within a category having similar operating characteristics, i.e. single-engine land, multi-engine land, etc. Type, a specific make and basic model of an aircraft including modifications that do not change its handling or flight characteristics, i.e. DC-9, B737, C150, etc. B. Currency requirements. What are the requirements to remain current as a private pilot? A. Within preceding 24 months, accomplish a flight review given in an aircraft for which that pilot is rated by an authorized instructor and received a logbook endorsement certifying that that person has satisfactorily completed the review. B. To carry passengers, a pilot must have made within the preceding 90 days 3 takeoffs and landings as the sole manipulator of flight controls of an aircraft of the same category and class, and if a type rating is required, the same type. So you gotta do touch and goes within 90 days to be able to carry passengers. If the aircraft is a tailwheel airplane, the landings must have been made to a full stop in an airplane with a tailwheel. If operations are to conduct during a period beginning 1 hour after sunset and 1 hour before sunrise with passengers on board, the PIC must have, within the preceding 90 days, made at least 3 takeoffs and 3 landings, touch and goes, to a full stop during that period in an aircraft. So if you want to fly at night, you have to do 3 landings and touch and goes within the 90 days. There's a note saying takeoffs and landings required by this regulation may be accomplished in a flight simulator or flight training device that is approved by the administrator and used in accordance with an approved course conductor. That's pretty good to know because we get 14 hours during our course to do the flight simulator, so we can do all of that and be certified, and that's good to know. You have number 2. You have not kept up with logging each of your recent flights. Are you in violation of any regulation? No, you're only required to document and record the training and or aeronautical experience used to meet the requirements of a certificate rating or flight review, and the aeronautical experience required for meeting the recent flight experiment requirements. Number 3, you are flying in a single-engine high-performance complex airplane. You hold a private pilot certificate with an airplane single-engine landing rating, but don't have a high-performance or complex airplane endorsement. Your friend who has those endorsements is acting as PIC for the flight. Can you log PIC for the time you act as sole manipulator of the controls? Explain. I was going to say no, but I saw the answer is yes. So, yes, governs 14 CFR 61.51 governs the login of pilot in command PIC time and states that a sport, recreational, private, commercial, or airline transport pilot may log PIC time for the time during which the pilot is the sole manipulator of the controls of an aircraft for which the pilot is rated or has privileges. Note, this means you can log PIC time, but you cannot act as PIC. For a pilot to act as PIC, he or she must properly rated in the aircraft and authorized to conduct the flight, in which would include having the required endorsements for complex and high-performance airplanes. Okay. Number 4, explain the difference between being current and being proficient. Being current means that a pilot has accomplished the minimum FAA regulatory requirements within a specific time period, so he or she can exercise the privileges of their certificate. It means that you're legal to make a flight, but does not necessarily mean that you're proficient or competent to make that flight. Being proficient means that the pilot is capable of conducting a flight with a high degree of competence, and it requires that the pilot must have a wide range of knowledge and skills. Being proficient is not about just being legal in terms of the regulations, but is about being smart and safe in terms of pilot experience and proficiency. That makes sense. Number 5. How will establishing personal minimums checklists reduce risk? That's easy, because if you got to establish how you feel, like if you're if you don't feel safe going below a certain level of gas, then you know you're never going to run out of fuel and stuff like that. If you don't feel like taking off when there's too much wind, it helps. Um, let's see what the answer says. Professional pilots live by the numbers, and so should you. Pre-established numbers can make it a lot easier to come to a smart go, no-go, or diversion decision than would the fake sense that you can probably deal with the conditions you face at any given time. A written set of personal minimums also make it easier to explain tough cancellation or diversion decisions to passengers who are, after all, trusting their lives to aeronautical skill and judgment. That's true. So if you want to say, I don't want to go because it's below my minimums, yeah, it makes sense. Number 6. The airplane you normally rent has been grounded due to intermittent electrical problems. You ask to be scheduled in another plane. During the pre-flight of the new airplane, you discovered that it has avionics you're unfamiliar with. Should you go ahead and depart on your VFR flight? Pilot familiarity with all equipment is critical in optimizing both safety and efficiency. If a pilot is unfamiliar with any aircraft systems, this will add to the workload and can contribute to a loss of situational awareness. This level of proficiency is critical and should be looked upon as a requirement, not unlike carrying an adequate supply of fuel. As a result, pilots should not look upon unfamiliarity with the aircraft and its system as a risk control measure, but instead as a hazard with a high risk potential. Discipline is the key to success. Makes sense. Number 7. If a pilot changes his or her permanent mailing address and fails to notify the FAAM and certification branch of the new address, how long may the pilot continue to exercise the privileges of the pilot certificate? Answer: 30 days after the date of the move. What flight time can a pilot log as second-in-command time? A person may log second-in-command SIC time only for that flight time during which that person is qualified in accordance with the SIC requirements and occupies a crew member station in the aircraft that requires more than one pilot by the aircraft type certificate. B holds the appropriate category, class, and instrument rating if an instrument rating is required for the flight, for the aircraft being flown, and more than one pilot is required under the type certification. C. Medical certificates. Is that the end of the section? No, one more page to go. To exercise the privileges of a private pilot certificate, what medical certificate is required and how long is it valid? You must hold at least a third-class medical certificate. The medical certificate expires at the end of the 60th month after the date of the examination shown on the certificate. If on the date of your most recent medical examination you were under the age of 40, the 24th month after the month of the after the date of the examination. If on the date of your most recent medical examination you are if you are over 40. So 60 months if you're under 40, 24 months if you're over 40, which I'm not, thankfully. Number 2. Spring finally arrived and the weather looks great, so you decide to rent an airplane and go fly. The problem is your allergies are giving you problem and you have just taken your medication. Can you still fly? Explain. No. The safest rule is not to fly while taking medication, unless approved to do so by the FAA. Some of the most commonly used over-the-counter drugs, OTC, antihistamines, and decongestants have the potential to cause noticeable adverse side effects, including drowsiness, cognitive defects. 14 CFR prohibits pilots from performing crew member duties while using any medication that affects the body in any way contrary to safety. If there is any doubt regarding the effects of any medication, consult Aviation Medical Examiner AME before flying. Number 3. Where can you find a list of medical conditions that may disqualify you from obtaining a medical certificate? The standards for medical certification are contained in 14 CFR Part 67, and the requirements for obtaining medical certificates can be found in 14 CFR Part 61. At the end of Chapter 1, additional study questions. Ooh, this is going to be hard. One way a pilot can limit exposure to risks is to set personal minimums for items in each risk category. PAVE. Describe individual minimums you will establish yourself. So, personal minimums that I will feel for myself. So, if I don't feel good, that would be one. If I have any doubt at all about fuel, if there's a limit, depending, I won't go. Normally in the car, I don't go below a quarter of gas. If I do, I instantly go refuel, or I don't go driving. So I would apply the same minimum to flying. If I don't feel comfortable at any point for any reason, I won't fly. Number 2, as a newly certified pilot, you are ready to utilize your certificate. I am a friend and need you to fly a package to a distant destination. I will pay for the airplane if you accept. Do the regulations allow you to accept the offer? No, because you have to pay pro rata. I would have to pay my share of the expenses. For a person under the age of 40, when will a third-class medical certificate issued on March 15, 2016 expire? 60 days after March 15th. So I'll need a calculator for that, but you know. So it'll be 75 days after, so whatever it is after that. 60 days after March 15th. So April 15 is 30. Okay. Number 4. I beg your pardon. It's supposed to be months, not days. I was like 60. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure it says. Yeah, 60th month, not days. Wow. I just read that too. What are some examples of general medications that are temporarily disqualifying? Decongestants and antihistamines, drug medicines, cold and flu medicines. If your driver's license was recently suspended for driving under the influence of alcohol, DUI, but you have not been actually convicted of a crime, must you report this to the FAA? I would say yes, automatically. You have allowed over 24 months to lapse since your last flight review. Is your prior pilot certificate now invalid? What do you have to do to be legal to fly again? It's not really invalid, but it's not current. you would have to get an instructor to do 3 touch and goes and landings. Unless it's a tail wheel, then you have to land to a full stop. And the same again for night flights. If you want an hour, if your flight includes an hour after sunset and an hour before sunrise, then you have to do 3 touch and goes at night. Number 7. Are there any other activities a pilot can accomplish that can be substitute? Yeah, they can be done in a flight simulator. If that's what I mean. Are there any other activities a pilot can accomplish that can be substituted for a flight review? Um, no, to substitute the flight review, not really, but the actual flight review can be done in the flight simulator and with an instructor. Number 8. What regulatory requirements must be met prior to a pilot acting as PRZ and then what regulatory requirements must be met prior to a pilot acting as PIC of an aircraft in a towing glider? You have to meet the requirements and you have to have the endorsements by your instructor. So that's the end of chapter 1. We got airworthiness requirements. I'll do that one either tomorrow or next week, I'll read it a little bit each day just so I can keep reminding myself. And when I get to the end, I'm going to go back and just read it all and watch myself read this and go over it myself too. So, hey, I'm going to go ahead and upload this. So I'm sure you're going to have a laugh at me. So have fun.